And it was really only after leaving office that he began to build his legacy. With his wife Rosalynn, he founded the Carter Center, a charity with his principle of healing at its heart. In 2002, it earned him the Nobel Peace Prize. And away from the spotlight, he was a painter, a furniture maker, a winemaker, an author of 32 books.
All right, so you ready to dive in?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Today we're taking a deep dive into the life and legacy of Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, a truly remarkable man.
I mean, the guy lived to be 100. That's got to be some kind of record, right?
It is. He actually holds the record for the longest lifespan of any U.S. president.
Wow. A century of American history right there.
Exactly. And he wasn't just a witness to it, he shaped it.
And we're going to explore all of that. Right?
Oh, absolutely. We've got this fantastic Sky News report featuring Mark Stone as our guide. Should be pretty fascinating.
Perfect. So where do we even begin with a life that spanned a whole century?
Well, I think it makes sense to start at the beginning. You know, back in the 1930s, Georgia, where he grew up, was a very different place.
Segregation, Jim Crow laws, all of that.
Right. And it was in this environment that Carter's values were really formed. His mother, Lillian, was a huge influence on him.
I've heard she was quite a character.
She was. You know, she was a nurse, and she'd often bike miles to provide care in Black communities. This was during a time when segregation was the law of the land.
So she was actively defying the norms at the time.
Oh, absolutely. She was a staunch advocate for racial equality, even at their own home. She'd often invite Black families over for dinner. Imagine that, in the heart of the Jim Crow South.
Wow. That's really putting your beliefs into action.
Yeah.
Do you think these early experiences had a direct impact on Carter's later policies?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, he was one of the first presidents to really champion diversity in his cabinet and judicial appointments.
That's a big deal.
It was. He also fought hard for voting rights legislation, especially for minorities. His commitment to fairness and equality was clearly rooted in his upbringing.
That's an amazing connection. It's like seeing the seeds of his presidency being planted way back then.
Exactly. And you have to remember, he came into office right after Nixon and Watergate. The country was kind of craving a leader with integrity.
Yeah, America needed a breath of fresh air.
And Carter was seen as that. He presented himself as a man of faith, compassion, and honesty. Real down to earth.
It was a stark contrast to the scandals and cynicism of the Nixon era.
Absolutely. And, you know, that same sincerity, that straight shooting style, it could also be a bit of a challenge for him in the political arena.
How so?
Well, he wasn't one to play political games. He often spoke his mind very bluntly, and that sometimes rubbed people the wrong way, even within his own party.
I guess navigating the complexities of Washington requires a certain level of tactical finesse.
Right. And Carter wasn't always known for that. But let's move on to one of the undeniable highlights of his presidency. The Camp David Accords.
Yeah, that was a landmark moment. But to be honest, I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. Can you give us the rundown?
Sure. So picture this. Egypt and Israel had been at war like multiple times for decades. Tensions were incredibly high. And then Carter comes in and orchestrates this incredible summit at Camp David.
Camp David being the presidential retreat, right?
Yeah. Exactly. He brings together Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. And they lock themselves away for like 13 days of intense negotiations.
That sounds intense.
Oh, it was. But the outcome was truly historic. They hammered out a peace treaty, which included the return of the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt, and perhaps even more significantly, it led to the formal recognition of Israel by an Arab state.
So it wasn't just a symbolic handshake. It had real, tangible consequences.
Exactly. It really shifted the landscape in the Middle East. But the report also mentioned some controversies surrounding Carter's stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, that's always a sensitive topic.
It is. And Carter didn't shy away from it. He was a very vocal advocate for Palestinian rights, even going so far as to use the term apartheid to describe the situation in the occupied territory.
That must have caused quite a stir.
It did. And you know, the term apartheid carries a lot of weight. It refers to a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination, and Carter saw parallels in the treatment of Palestinians.
That's a pretty strong statement.
It is. And it sparked a lot of debate, as you can imagine. But whether you agree with him or not, you gotta respect his willingness to speak out on such a complex and emotionally charged issue.
Absolutely. And speaking of complex and emotionally charged, we can't talk about Carter's presidency without addressing the Iran hostage crisis.
Of course, it was a defining moment of his presidency, for sure.
those images of Americans held captive for over a year, it's still seared into our collective memory.
It was a traumatic experience for the entire nation. It began in late 1979 when Iranian revolutionaries stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 Americans hostage.
And the failed rescue attempt in 1980 only added to the sense of national frustration and helplessness.
Right. And Carter was under immense pressure to do something, anything, to bring those hostages home. But he remained incredibly cautious, refusing to take any actions that might endanger their lives.
There's a powerful quote from him during that time. "I love my country and its people more than anything." It really speaks to his character, doesn't it?
It does. And ultimately, his patience and persistence paid off. The hostages were finally released just minutes after he left office.
What a bittersweet victory.
Uh-huh.
He worked tirelessly for their freedom, but it came at the cost of his re-election.
That's true. And let's be honest, the economic struggles during his term played a role in his defeat against Ronald Reagan as well. But what's truly amazing is how he bounced back after leaving the White House. He didn't just retire to a life of leisure.
He went on to build an incredible legacy of humanitarian work through the Carter Center.
Exactly. Founded in 1982, the Carter Center has been at the forefront of tackling some of the world's most pressing issues: poverty, disease, conflict resolution.
They've really made a difference on a global scale.
They have. From monitoring elections in emerging democracies to eradicating guinea worm disease in Africa to promoting peace in conflict zones around the world, their impact has been immense.
And all this after serving as president. It's like he had a whole second act full of incredible achievements.
He did. And on top of all that, he remained active in domestic affairs, building homes with Habitat for Humanity, writing over 30 books. The man was a force of nature.
Yeah. Always busy, always engaged. And let's not forget his personal life. He and Rosalind were married for almost 80 years.
A true love story. They shared a deep commitment to service and a genuine love and respect for each other.
I love that image of them holding hands, even in their later years.
It's a beautiful testament to their enduring bond. He even continued to teach Sunday school well into his 90s.
It's a powerful reminder that a meaningful life isn't just about holding high office. It's about using your time and talents to make the world a better place.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think that's what makes Carter's legacy so compelling. He was a complex figure full of contradictions, but at his core, he was a man driven by a deep sense of morality and a genuine desire to serve humanity.
And that leaves us with a lot to ponder, doesn't it? How did Carter's unwavering belief in human dignity and his tireless efforts towards peace and justice shape the world we live in today? His impact extends far beyond his presidency, leaving an indelible mark on the global stage and inspiring generations to come.
Yeah, a lot to think about for sure.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the extraordinary life of Jimmy Carter. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
And we'll see you on our next exploration.